into his glory? So y'all with me? And all of his angels were with him. He will sit on his glorious throne when the Son of Man come in his glory, and all of his angels with him. He will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people one from another as a shepherd separates sheep from goats. Verse number 33, he will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on the right, come ye who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me, and I was in prison, and you came to visit me. Verse number 37, then the righteous will answer him. Get this. Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and gave you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invited you in and needing clothes? When did we see you sick, in prison, and to go visit you? Verse number 40, the Bible says, the king will reply, truly I tell you, whoever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did it for me. I want to talk about the compassionate call say compassionate call to serve the least of these. The compassionate call to serve the least of these. Some of us in our here, we have individuals in our family that is in prison. How many of your family members that you have with a plate of food this week? Some of your grandchildren or your great grandchildren or your nephews needed a place to stay, and you reached out and you are dealing with trying to close the gaps of disparities when it comes to making sure that your daughter or your son light bill or their gas bill or their student loan or just to just get a plate of food for the next day. Am I talking to anybody? I'm really talking about being compassionate to those that are less or least or not having what you don't have, but you're willing to suffer with them and to hurt with them and to feel with them and to understand that even though you don't understand them and you feel like that they don't deserve it, you're willing to have compassion. Have you ever been in a situation where you had too much pride and too much swag or too much whatever, and you was too proud to ask for it. I know I'm probably looking at somebody that's walking and tiptoe, is it towing on pride, and that is in need right now for some assistance and for someone with them. No, you may not be in prison. You may not need any clothes. You may not need some food, but your mind is messed up. Can I get a witness? You might be dealing with some depression or some frustration or some anxiety. In this text, Jesus is speaking to the social ills of society of his day. In this text, we will find Jesus using this parable, creating a narrative to help individuals understand that we got some problems going on. Hovey Street, we got some problems going on in 46218. Have you read the data lately about how the prisons have increased with our black boys and black girls? We got some problems going on in our community. Have you read the data about that we have a food desert right here in our area? Where are the Walmarts? Where are the Krogers? Are y'all following me? They don't build Meyer stores in our community. Jesus was dealing with the social ills of his day. And he uses a parable to create a narrative. And we're having those same problems today. I was downtown a few days ago, and the homelessness in our community has just gotten outrageous. How many people you know that's in your family that's homeless? I know I got 2 or 3 people in my family right now that's homeless, that's sleeping on the street, and it does something to my soul. We need to be moved when we see individuals that are homeless. I'm down by Willard's Mission place. I was down there. You ever go down to the Eagles down there? And right across the street, you find Willard's Mission. And it's about 15 brothers just gathered there on the corner. What are you saying? We got a problem in our community. In this text, Jesus is talking to us, to that group of people, about the awareness that he had about what was going on with the individuals. In this parable, you will see he is really talking about this ideal of servanthood. I believe that we're called to be homeless. We're called to serve the homeless, rather. Brother Donnell, he had written a book, and he talked about in this book, it's really talking about servanthood. It's talking about leadership. And in his book, he talks about, the title of this book is Unleashing the Leader in You. And I believe that's what Jesus was trying to do when he was talking to that audience. He was trying to identify and help them to identify that there is a need in the community that we live in. There is a need in our community and also in your family, right in the house you live in. In this book, Pastor Howard, he asked this question, and I want you to get it. Now, I thought it was dope because it's a therapeutic question that he asked. He said, what would happen would someone use their influence to better somebody else? What would happen if each one of us would use our influence to better the person that's next to you? I'm talking to the young men right there on their phones right now. What would happen if you would use, I'm talking to the young lady back there in pink with the bow ribbon. What would happen if we would use our influence to better somebody else? Wouldn't we have a different world? It all depends on what kind of influence you have. And there are two types of influence that I believe that runs rapid in our society. That's that good and the bad. And maybe the ugly too. But what would happen if we would use our influence for the good? Y'all know I'm a different kind of preacher now. I really want you to think about that. How would the world be if we would use the right influence? Because that's what Jesus was alluding to. He was speaking to the social determinants of life. What do you mean by that? The social determinants in life, they influence the health outcomes that we deal with, the conditions that we grow up with, the people that we're born, and where we work, and where we live, and where we live, and our age. But we're dealing with a system that continue to oppress us as people of color. Do y'all really feel that, or are we just? It is a religious system, it's an economic system, it's a political system. And it feels like sometimes that we have not prepared ourselves, our families, and the church on how to navigate through these systems. What Jesus was trying to say to them is that I do have a way to do it. I have an approach, I have a plan. But for whatever reason, we as people of color have relied on those systems. Can I get a witness? What are some of those systems that we have relied on? One is religion. Right? Right now, there is a war going on in Israel because of political and religious differences. We fight constantly right here in this city because of our differences. But then, I don't know if you know it or not, you have a pastor that's working on the back roads, in the alleys, in these smoke rooms where they're making these deals, and do y'all hear what I'm saying? And that's out there every day, that's beating the pavement, and that's doing ministry in a compassionate way to serve the least of these. trying to make a difference here at Hovey Street. The political system we rely on too. Did you get to vote? Who did you vote the other day? Did you vote for Pastor Howard's favorite mayor? Yeah, I know Howard don't like Hut Nut, but is it Hut Nut? No, Hog said. Well, okay, I don't live in Indianapolis, but I'm just. But my point is that we have these political systems that even affects Hovey Street right here. And we're relying on those systems. Well, I hear somebody saying, well, we can't do anything about it. Cornel West wrote this book about prophetic prophecies and a prophetic fire that we should have as a church. And he suggests that the prophetic fires within the church have burned out because of the leaders are not willing to die for what they believe in. They're not willing to go the extra mile to feed the hungry. Not willing to go into the prisons to visit them. Not willing to go the extra mile to close individuals because church has become so a place of entertainment and a way to achieve upward mobility within society. Am I talking to anybody this morning that's caught up in a system? I'm really talking about the compassionate call to serve the least of these. What is the path that Jesus was trying to get this group to? What was the method that he used to feed the hungry? And we know that he had the ability to pop his finger and a Kroger store would just pop up. Myers would just pop up, and he was able to just do things magically, you know. He performed these miracles, guys. In other words, that's what he done. But what have he left with us to close these gaps that we're dealing with every day around education, the disparities within our educational system, the disparities around gun violence, all the deaths that are going on right here in this cities? I'll get to the preaching points in just a minute, but I need to have these conversations with you about what's going on with Brother Donnell is trying to deal with every day. And then he has to go home, and then Keisha has to hear about it. We try to create a safe spot for him, and Keisha allows him to come every now and then to kind of nurture him sometimes. But still, sometimes that's just not enough. And I think, church, you need to be aware of the fight that your minister is having every day in this city. Compassionate. I'm asking you, Hovey Street, to be willing to suffer with him in this process. Well, I hear somebody saying, well, Brother Holland, I give my time and my talent. I don't have anything else to give to Hovey. By the way, I'm dealing with some church hurt. Brother Nell called y'all chocolate people. Chocolate people, we are in a conundrum. And I don't know how serious you all are taking these challenges that we're dealing with. But I think sometimes it's because of the social constructs that we get distorted with. We get caught up into how the system, the political system, the religious system, the education system, the educational system has told us to have taught us to accommodate and to, yeah, you kind of follow what I'm saying. We need to do A. We need to get better jobs and better clothes and better houses. And all of that is totally in contrast to what Jesus is teaching. And they said, well, look at you, Brother Holly. You sitting up there with a $600 suit on. And I'm not saying that we don't deserve the better things of life. But I'm saying some type of way, church, we have to galvanize our energy, our talents to deal with these social ills. And so in this text, we find Jesus, he's talking about a disparity around food. And when you're talking about the social disparities of life, the CDC, it talks about food insecurities, job security, neighborhood conditions, affordable health care, educational opportunities, housing. Does that hit any of us? How many of you would like to live in a better neighborhood? I mean, basically, that's what he was talking about. How many would you would like for your brother or your sister or your friend or your nephew that got 20 years, instead of doing 20 years, he's released or they're released? How many would you would like to have better clothing? We deserve it. Our forefathers fought, and they helped build this country. Am I talking to anybody? Well, that's what your pastor is fighting for. Because I believe he has a compassionate call to serve the least of these. I was coming down here from 38th Street and coming down, what is the street out here? 25th Street, 38th Street, and just kind of riding through here. And as I was riding through the neighborhoods, I seen the disparities. The roads, chuck holes in it. If you go up past 96th Street, there's no chuck holes. There's a school somewhere over here. And if I had to give it a grade, I give the building maybe a C minus. If you go up on 116th Street, they're brand new schools. I'm talking about disparity. This is what Jesus was talking about. Where's the closest grocery store around here? And what's over there? What is it called? And what kind of food they sell? But if you go on 96th Street off of or Ditch Road, 116th Street, they built a brand new store up there called District Market. I feel like I'm losing y'all, but I'm trying to talk about this text very practical way where Jesus is talking about social determinants that we are dealing with. How many of you past 21 still live at home? I'm going to suggest stay as long as you can and save all the money you can. Mhm. If you go back to the text and if you look at that verse where Jesus is talking about in verse number 40, the king will reply, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did it to me." I believe what he was offering right there is a model for us. The spiritual pathway out of these social determinants is what I call the lease model. It's the model that God have allowed me to run. And I want you to hear this, especially my young black men and young black boys and young black women that are aspiring to be an entrepreneur. You got to figure out what you're called to do. I don't know what it is, but don't believe in the hype that you see on TikTok, that you see on Facebook or Instagram or on the news or whatever. Don't believe that hype. We need you here in our communities to make a difference, to give that energy and that creativity and that strength back to this community that we're living in. Y'all following me? I'm about to get radical in just a few minutes. But I wanted to kind of talk through this process first. We need young men and young women to give back to the community, and it becomes the church's responsibility to cultivate that. But because of the social constructs and what we're faced with, we have our young people there enamored, and it's like it feels like we're losing ground in the race that we're in. But in this text, Jesus said, "If you did it to me, you've done it to the least of them." I had the opportunity to open up a business about 10 to 12 years ago, and I used this model, and I stole this model from, it's a biblical model that I've used, and it's been very successful in creating jobs and closing the gaps around housing and then around education, around medicine, around the accessibility to medicine, or should I say health care. And it was called the lease model. And I want you to get this if you don't get anything else, Brother Donnell. And I believe that you're doing it here at Hovey Street. The lease model is designed to help the servant to identify the need of the person and to offer spiritual actions to implement to help them solve the challenges and the gaps. It's right there in the text. He said, "I want you to serve the least of these." And he creates this narrative, this parable. God wants you to create a narrative. He wants you to create a message, to be able to understand, to be able to write it out so that you know what your next step is based upon your call. Now, if you want to be worthy of your call, like Paul suggested, there are some steps and there are some work that you have to do. Okay. But what is this? To get us out of the pathway, or to get us right on the right path. What does this model look like? What does it taste like? How does it work, Brother Holland? It's an acronym. And I use this acronym and I use this ideal of the model in my mission statement. And it's simply just saying serving the least of them in a sophisticated, evidence-based way to help them to close their gaps. Am I talking to anyone? What I'm saying, church, is that we have a gravitating pull. God has put something in us, the ability to be compassionate, to be able to suffer with someone else, and to pull resources together to accomplish a goal. Hovey Street. Howard has been here 12 years. And he's doing this right before your eyes. And I don't know if you get it, but it's a biblical principle. Can I talk to you, family? This model have allowed me to become one of the premier black agencies in this city. And I took it from the Bible. This model has allowed me to serve 1,000 families right here in this city and in this area. This model has allowed me to hire 150 people, and 90% of them are people of color. Are y'all following me? Why are you doing this, Brother Holland? Because I knew that God had placed in me the ability to be compassionate. We as black folks, we have the ability to be compassionate. We are the moral code gatherers of this society. We are the individuals that are holding the hands of God for his wrath. Am I talking to anybody this morning? And in that text, the Lord is trying to tell them, you got something that money cannot buy. You got something that you shouldn't sell. But you got to keep believing and you got to keep trusting it. Well, Lord, when did we see you hungry and we didn't feed you? When did we see you in prison and we didn't come? When did we see you naked? God has placed something in each of us. And I believe it's part of our lineage, it's part of our DNA as people of color, is to be able to take off our shoes and to step into somebody else's shoes. Am I talking to anybody? Well, this is what he done. He said, serving the least of these, the model that he gave, and I think sometimes we miss it. That model is an acronym. And the L in the least model stands for love. Can I get a witness? Jesus said, a new commandment that I give you, that ye love ye one another as I loved you. Are y'all following me? It is something about this concept of love that affects the neurological system. And when I say system, I'm talking about the neurological system that is intrinsically put in you on the inside. But not only on the inside, it affects the outer community too. But for some reason, we have stopped believing in this concept of love within the framework of the church. Touch somebody just real quick. next to you. You feel the warmth? And if you hold them long enough, I could teach you an exercise in terms of feeling their pulse and the blood running through their vein, but we don't have the time right now. But the ideal is for us to connect in love. Are you following what I'm saying? Is to connect in love. What did he say about love in 1 Corinthians? You can have what? Am I at the church? You can have what? You're able to do what? You can have faith that does what? That's able to do what? And if you don't have what will happen? You'll have nothing. Brother Holland, why are you doing us like this? Because we need to understand the power of the words that are in the Bible. I want you to take your time and read 1 Corinthians chapter 13. There's power in love. How much time I got? About 5 more minutes. Yep. Working with these families was one thing that I've learned, and like I said, it's about 1,000 families that I work with in the system, with these 150 providers. One of our core values is this ideal of love and empathy. And they said, how are you going to create a business based out of love? I took it from the church. I took it from the Bible. This ideal of empathy. And now, church, we're able to get in the households that the pastor and the first lady and the church members can't get in. What are you saying? We got to be creative. The least motto, love. The E in the least motto is to encourage. Y'all follow me? How many of you every now and then just need somebody to say everything is going to be all right? You know, everything is going to be all right. What's that old song? My light bill due, my rent too, and you know. But everything is going. Jesus is saying, when somebody don't have clothing, when somebody's locked up in prison, when somebody don't have food, show them love. Take off your shoes and step in their shoes. To encourage those that are strong, supposed to do what? Bear the infirmities of the weak. This is basically what he's saying. He's using this model. The least of these. To love them. To encourage them. But this is the hard one right here. To accept them. How many of you got married and there's some things about your spouse you just, oh, I ain't dealing with this. How many of you in relationships or your certain things? I'm putting my feet down and I'm not dealing with this no more. Am I talking to anybody? To accept. We call it witness within therapy, not witness. Too busy trying to witness, but not really trying to get down in the mud or in the dirt with them to help them out of whatever situation they're in. We got to learn how to step into people where they are and meet them where they are. I just thought I'd talk to y'all this morning. Acceptance. Acceptance. Is there anybody here knows how it feels to be accepted? Doesn't care where you've been, who you've been with, how long you've been out, what you drank, what you snorted, what you stole, what you lied on, who you lied on. Or am I talking to anybody? I know somebody, Sister Avery, I know you got some kids, Lord have mercy. I know I got a daughter, and she gets on my last out. But anyway. But I had to learn how to accept her in her growth and development. Am I talking to anybody? Acceptance. Sometimes when I'm going down 38th Street and right at where Crown Hill is, and you find these people out with signs or whatever, and sometimes I feel like, okay, I'm gonna look this way. I hope they don't come to y'all know what I'm talking about. And I'm not suggesting that you should dodge people or you should give to people. It's kind of left up to you where you are. But just kind of learning that could be me. No clothes, no shoes. There's a song about that. But the ideal is when you're talking about serving the least of these, we have to create spaces of acceptance. It's something about acceptance that it's internal, that people feel that energy and that pull when you're really willing to accept them. I think if you want to reduce crime, I got your attention. If you want to reduce crime in the intercity, there's this concept around acceptance before the gun and the thought is in the head of that person. There's some research that indicates the reason why people are devious and have this behaviors is because somewhere in their developmental process they didn't feel accepted. And the adrenaline rush to engage and to perform the crime gives them that sensation that they feel that they missed by not being accepted. Am I helping anybody this morning? So, church, we have to become aware of the developmental processes of individuals and how behavior works and how people think and their emotions and why people do what they do. The church is designed to be a place of acceptance. How many people that you know, Brother Danell, that's got in trouble, but they needed to turn themselves in that they came to you? Why? Because they felt accepted. See, acceptance, when you feel accepted, you feel safe. It's like a big hug. Am I talking to anybody? I can just I don't have any hair, but let my hair down. I'm at home. What Jesus is saying, if you practice the least model, and when you accept people, they will feel like they're at home. In other words, they will feel whole. Am I here? Do y'all hear what I'm saying? And the ideal is that in our developmental process, all this stuff, this maze that we're going through, we're trying to become whole. We're trying to be accepted. So do you want to be called, or are you called by compassion? What would it look like if we had created this space of love and encouragement and acceptance within these systems, in the political system, in the religious system that I've been talking about, the educational system? Love, encouragement, acceptance. The S in this motto, it stands for servant, sacrificial servanthood. There are some black folk that work for me right now. I promise you I want to get rid of. But I got to accept them, and I'm called them to serve. I was talking to some of the directors the other day, and they said, well, they don't call me Brother Holland, they call me Dr. Holland. Dr. Holland, he said, why are you still holding on to this lady? Because I'm called to be a sacrificial servant. Well, she's stealing from you. She stole $22,000 from you. I said, yeah, I know. But I know what I'm called to do. I'm called to close the gaps. Because if I fire that lady, she's not going to be able to pay for her son's education. If I fire that lady, she might not have housing. Might not have transportation. If I fire that lady, she may not have accessibility to for medicine. So I have to figure out a way on how to accept her and put some policies and procedures in place. That's what God has done. To help her to become whole. I just imagine that we can create a space like that. God has let me create a space like that in business. So why can't we create a space like that in the church? We're called to be sacrificial servants. So if any of you got some family members and that you're not getting along with because they done something wrong to you, or they owe you $50, you know how brother $50 you and $20 you. Figure out a way on how to reconnect with them. To be a sacrificial servant. I'm talking about the lease model that's working in business. This lease model is so powerful is that God has allowed me to sign another new contract for about $60 million. And I'm trying to understand for 5 years. So I know that we've secured money for my people of color for 5 years. I know that they're going to have house. For 5 years, I know that they're going to be able to pay for their kids' education. For 5 years, they're going to have medicine and Medicare, whatever you call that stuff. For 5 years, they have the opportunity to move to better places. How can we take this model and implement it into the church? To love, to encourage, to accept, to serve. And that last one is teaching them to live triumphantly from day to day. Jesus gave us the Great Commission. Matthew 28. What did he say? And I command you to go ye to on all the world. I need you to come to Indianapolis. Danelle, I need you to leave Muncie and I need you to come to Indianapolis. Keisha, I need you to leave Muncie and come to Indianapolis to 23, 60, 38. And I need you to plant your vision, what you're doing here. Or what you was doing in Muncie, I want you to do it here. What I want you to do, I want you to teach people how to live triumphantly. Are y'all feeling me? Well, how do you teach people how to live triumphantly? You give them skills. You expose them to opportunities. You connect them to resources. That's what your pastor has been trying to do and is doing the last 12 years. How many of you had the opportunity to go to the Evolve Center? Right over here. What's that address? If I had a bus, I would chart y'all all. I'd put y'all on the bus, and we'll go right over there right now and look at the work that we're doing. You know, they got a YMCA right across the street. Why can't we have an Evolve Center? That's going to identify our needs and give us what we need and create. If Jesus came back today and he walked through that door with some dreads, a beard, some Nikes, and a sweatsuit, it would probably blow our mind. Well, don't be surprised if he does look like that. Because the powers to be teaches us something totally different. When I read that scripture, prison, homelessness, I thought about what we're dealing with in America. And whoever gave that commission, and I don't know what color Jesus is, but I just believe he was a brother telling them that story. It was a brother that was filled with compassion. And so this morning I'm wondering, is there anybody here? Is there anybody here that feels that they're called to serve with compassion? Is there anybody here that is called to love your community unconditionally? Is there anybody here that's called to encourage your community and your family when you know that? Anybody here that's called to accept individuals when they've broken your heart? Is there anybody here feeling me to serve sacrificially when you know that that person don't deserve it, but you do it anyway? Is there anybody here that's willing to go the extra mile and to support Hovey Street Church of Christ in this effort to make a difference? I said, is there anybody here to teach people how to live triumphantly? Why don't you get up on your feet? Is there anybody here that's willing to come to Christ to start this journey? To start your call to make a difference in our community. Matthew 25, in verse number 35, the Bible said that the king said, you've done a good job, and so I want you on the right side. In other words, that you demonstrated love and acceptance and encouragement and sacrifices, and you taught individuals. But then there's another side, and I really don't like to talk about that other side, but it's a reality. Sometimes, the Bible calls it hell, or whatever the case may be, hell or that place of Hades. The choice is yours. As the prayer is preparing to open up the space for you to come.